To do some housekeeping information before we get started. First, I do want to let you all know that this meeting is being recorded. We will have a copy of the training in a video format that will be on KATC's YouTube channel for later viewing for those that were not able to attend or would like to see it again. My name is Andrea Polk. I work for Aetna Better Health of Kentucky as the Children's System of Care Administrator. I want to thank you all for attending our third series of the Spring Autism Training Provider Sessions this April. We will be providing another series in September, and we will be sending out the flyer sometime this summer for those trainings. So again, today, if you guys can just make sure you're on mute, and some of you may have already received the link to today's PowerPoint and resources. If not, that link is in the chat already, and I will be providing it throughout the session in the chat. Also, at the end of today's meeting, there will be an evaluation link for you all to also complete. That way you can get credit for attending and CEUs. You will want to put that this was the Aetna training series. That will prompt to be able to put your name and email so that the CEU can be sent to you. Sometimes systems have a Google firewall, so if you are not able just to click on the link, you will want to handwrite it down and see if you can find another device that will allow you to access that. So without further ado, I do want to introduce you all to Kim Howard. She's a field training coordinator with the Kentucky Autism Training Center, and she is here today to talk to us about antecedent based interventions.
Hi, I'm gonna turn on my camera. I'm not sure if it's letting you see me or not, but I'll turn it on just for a minute while I talk a little bit about who I am. So I am Kimberly Howard and I work for Kentucky Autism Training Center. My background is I'm a dual certified special education teacher, so learning and behavior disorders as well as moderate and severe disabilities. I spent 13, 14 years in the classroom and have taught all age levels across that time span. I've worked for Kentucky Autism Training Center. This is year 9 for me, and this is one of my favorite topics because if we can prevent behavior, why would we not want to? So that's why it says yes, please. So we'll get started. And if you have any questions, you are welcome to pop those into the chat. And I will definitely try to leave some time at the end. And I'm going to apologize in advance if my voice goes out. Hopefully it will not. It will cooperate with us and all will go well. But I've been a little bit under the weather. So, okay, today's objectives. We're going to leave with an understanding of what antecedent-based interventions are. We're going to leave with ideas for getting started. How do we implement these? And I'm going to talk about them kind of across the age spectrum. So hopefully we'll hit your age. And then you're going to leave with resources. I will show you a QR code for a resource folder if you did not receive that link already. That has a lot of different things that I'm going to talk about right now, plus some extras. So I want to start here. This is our evidence-based practice chart. Evidence-based practice comes from us from the National Professional Development Center on Autism Spectrum Disorder, and I'm going to give you their website next. Antecedent-based intervention is right here. You're going to see it directly on the left. And it is so useful because antecedent-based interventions covers the whole lifespan, birth to age 21, which is where these stop at. And I always tell people, if it works at age 21, then it should work at age 25. It's going to continue on. So it covers adaptive self-help skills. We're covering social skills. We're hitting academic skills. For older students, we're hitting help in the area of mental health. So it covers a broad range and is so very effective. And I have used this with both my students. I have used this for myself. I have used these for family members. So I can tell you from personal experience that they work very effectively. And so we're going to dive into what they are. First, here is where you can find, I'm going to give you a couple, one of my goals is resources. So the evidence-based practice briefs and the modules. Today is a drop in the bucket. And if you're supporting families or you're supporting your own learning and you want more information, Autism Internet modules and the Affirm modules are both great places that you can continue your learning, as well as all of these websites are also phenomenal places to find out more information. Vanderbilt has great stuff. O'Calley has great stuff related to supporting students with autism, but also around antecedent-based interventions. So just know, and you have access to this PowerPoint, both in the resource folder and hopefully you received it in an email. So don't worry if you don't have this, don't feel like you need to write all of it down. All right, so what are antecedent-based interventions? Antecedent-based interventions, it's a collection of strategies with the goal being that we're going to make modifications that change the environment, that set and prompt the learner with autism to be less likely to engage in interfering behavior and more likely to engage in staying on task, which is what we need. The other thing, and here's your bonus points, I'm going to talk about this in the context of autism, but this is an effective strategy for a variety of abilities and a variety of disabilities, right? I have used this with students who have a lot of other diagnoses and found it to be incredibly effective. So just know that more bang for your buck, that this is something that you can try for a lot of people without, do no harm, right? This is one of those great strategies that you can use comfortably with a variety of people. So how do we get started? Well, how do we implement, right? So first you need to identify that interfering behavior, or if you're trying to encourage staying on task, you need to decide what does on task look like for them. And then you're going to collect a little bit of data, and I'm going to give you some data sheets as we go, and we'll talk about all of these more in depth, right? And then you're going to decide on the appropriate antecedent-based intervention, which we'll talk about in just a minute, a variety of options for you. And then you're going to implement that intervention, and you're going to see if it works or not. And hopefully you should come back and take a little bit of data. And I'm going to give you some sheets, different options for how you can easily take that data. And I'm a little bit of a nerd in that I like data. I like to know, is this really working or not? I don't want to take my best guess. I want to be certain that this is right for my student. And I'm going to talk about things in the context of student, but you can put in whatever noun you would like there, client, family member, whatever's appropriate for you. But I'm going to most comfortably say student. So just know that. So how do we get started? We have to listen to the message behind the behavior. Behavior communicates to us. When a child is engaging in any kind of behavior, or anyone, any human is engaging in any kind of behavior, there is a message behind it. It's telling us something. And we just have to learn how to listen to that behavior. What is it telling us? So one of the first places that we start with is with that, collecting a little bit of data. So I like to take ABC data, antecedent, behavior, consequence data, and I'm going to make this easy, right? Anybody can take this data. First, we have to know our antecedent, which is what happens right before the behavior occurs. The B is our behavior, and it needs to be a detailed description of the behavior. I'm a stranger and I come to your house. I need to know exactly what you're looking for. So if you tell me they're having a tantrum, what does a tantrum look like for your child or for your client or your student? What's the consequence? What happened right after the behavior occurred? Because frequently the consequences are feeding the behavior. If I engage in a behavior and it happens one time and then I stop, then that behavior did not get me what I needed. But if I engage in the same behavior over and over again, then that behavior is being fed. That behavior is meeting some need that I have, and I have to figure out how can I change the environment to make that be less likely and to help that person be more successful. So let's look at some ABC data, and I'm not going to read these to you. You all are probably very much able to read. So I'm going to tell you an example that I had most recently. So some of my ABC data. So my antecedent was I was supporting a school that was supporting a student who was going to middle school um, gym class. And the antecedent was gym class. He would go to gym class, and some days he was fine. He participated with his friends. He smiled and laughed and seemed to very much enjoy being in gym class. And then some days when he went to gym class, he would pick up a ball or pick up whatever object he could get his hand on and throw that at other students. And the school district was having a very hard time figuring out what was happening. And unfortunately, he hit someone in the head quite hard with a basketball, causing some injury. So my antecedent was gym class. My behavior was throwing a basketball with intent to hurt people, or with intent for harm. He was throwing the basketball at people. The consequence was he got put in timeout. When he would throw the ball, the gym teacher would become very upset, and the gym teacher would say, "Johnny," not his name, "Johnny, you cannot throw balls at people in gym. This is not safe." And he would send him up into the stands as a punishment. He would be removed from gym class. He would sit in the stands where this particular student would stem and be stemming and rocking and up in the stands, not participating in gym class. So what is happening here? What's happening? My A was gym class. My behavior was throwing that ball, and my consequence was he was removed. He was removed from gym class. He had to sit essentially in timeout in the stands. Well, for this particular student, we found out that our next slide is what was happening. What's our function behind the behavior? Well, he was escaping, right? Some functions of behavior, one of them is escape. And so he figured out that if he threw a ball at someone, then he could escape gym class. So we took a few days of actually with him, we took about 2 weeks of data because it was so randomized. And what we found was on gym days that they were going to play basketball or going to play like kickball type stuff, then he would throw the ball at someone. And on those days, they ran. And so we found that on days that he was going to have to run, he would throw the ball at someone and he would get to go to the stands in timeout. And then not participate. And he very much did not want to run. And I can't blame him. I don't want to run either. I don't want to run either. So for this particular student, we had to change the consequences and we had to change the environment. So one of the things that we did was on days that they were going to play basketball and run, the gym teacher would push, before the students came in, all of the balls would be in the front of the gym, which was the student's trigger. He would see the balls and he knew that they were going to have to run and then do basketball. And so we asked the gym teachers to keep the balls up out of visual sight, leave them in the back until he needed them. And then we asked that we needed to make some other changes to the environment. Running laps stinks. Let's be real here. No one likes to run laps. And so we had to make some adjustments in that assignment for this particular student. So he was allowed to walk laps, and he got to pick a buddy to walk laps with him, which made him very popular. It was very popular because no one wanted to run laps. And so we changed the environment in that he knew with a visual schedule that he was going to walk 3 laps while the other students were running 3 laps or 4 laps. And we did not give him access to the balls to throw the balls, so that he did not have anything to throw at students. And thankfully, this supported that behavior, and he stopped engaging in throwing the balls at people to get out of running laps. So what are other functions of behavior? So other functions of behavior, we say seat. Everybody takes a seat. So sensory or automatic, escape, avoid, attention-seeking behaviors, or tangibles. So so sensory behavior could be stimming. It could be that things are too loud or too bright. It could be that you're trying to escape a bad smell, or a smell that smells bad to you. Sensory can be a lot of those kinds of automatic things that are happening inside of your body. Can definitely come out as sensory needs. Maybe you have a really hard time sitting still, and your math class, you're expected to sit for 55 minutes without a break. And so that is a sensory need that could cause, definitely could cause behaviors. I've already talked a little bit about escape. Who wouldn't escape? I always tell people to think about this when we're using timeout, or we're sending people out of the environment that we're in. If I came to work and I was having a really bad day and I was going to be stuck in a meeting, and I could go to that meeting and I could lay down on the floor and cry really hard, and my boss would send me home because my boss would be like, buddy, you're out of here. If you cry, if you're like this, you're just going to have to leave. Then I might, right? If I didn't have the skills to say I need to take a break, or I need a mental health day. I need a mental health day today, or I need 5 minutes to pull myself together before I jump into this next activity. Attention seeking behavior can look like your kids, and we say with kids or adults sometimes, it's the soggy potato chip. Attention is attention, whether it's positive attention or negative attention. Both can definitely cause behavioral issues sometimes. A tangible is anything that I can get or hold in my hand, or that you can give me. So a tangible might be access to an iPad, or my favorite toy, or a sticker. It could be access to the game, my favorite game system, um, anything that you can get or give me. And then I always say another function of behavior that definitely, as I think a lot of folks on here are in that therapist range, medical needs, unmet medical needs. I have had experience in the past of sometimes when students are having a medical issue, especially when they don't have good communication systems, they can't tell you what is hurting or what is bothering them, then they communicate that pain or that anxiety through difficult behavior. Or what it appears like difficult behavior, but it's really a cry for help. I work with a student that we were asked to come and observe, and I had known him previously, and he had had some challenges along the way, but he had reached a point that he was doing really well, and he was upper high school age, and it looked like when we got there, the teacher was labeling it as non-compliant and defiant behavior. So she would ask him to do something, or his schedule would say something, and he just wouldn't do it. And he was kind of not responding, not looking at her, just really not giving her what she needed him to do. She needed him to follow the schedule and to go along with the activities. And he was a student he was non-speaking student, and he did have a communication system that he was pretty fluent in, but he did not have good communication for, I don't feel well. And so when we got there, we started, anytime I'm looking at students that are having challenging behavior, especially if it's new, I have a conversation about what's going on, anything has changed, just a good conversation with the people that are around them, and hopefully with that person, if they are able to communicate those things with me of what's changed. And the teacher said he'd been drinking a lot of water, he'd had a lot of thirst, he was having spells that he was laying down and he did not respond to them. And so I talked with the teacher and I asked when he had last had a physical, when he'd been to see a doctor. And so we called up his grandparent because he was being raised by his grandparent. And the grandparent said that this year was the year she had tried to take him to get a physical. And when they pulled into the doctor's office, he had physically attacked her. And she could not get him in to see the doctor. And so I told her that we were concerned about the excessive thirst. And we asked her if it was okay if the school nurse came down and just took a look at him, because the behavior did appear to be non-compliant or defiant behavior, but it also appeared that it could be a medical emergency. And when the nurse came down to the classroom to see this particular student, She had gotten permission from grandma to do a quick finger stick to check his blood sugar levels. And his blood sugar level was 1,000. So a 1,000 level of blood sugar is a medical emergency. We called 911 at that point because he wasn't being non-compliant or defiant. He was having diabetic ketoacidosis. And I could be saying that wrong. I'm not a doctor by any means. But he had developed severe type 1 diabetes, and it was a new issue for him. This was not something that had been known before in his previous physical. So just know that. If you have ruled out sensory, escape, attention, tangible, and you're still not sure what's happening, it's very possible that it could be an unmet medical need. I just like to make people aware of that because I think that it's easy to assume that behavior is defiant or behavior is non-compliant, but it could also be that they don't feel well and they may not have the verbal skills to say, I feel terrible today, or, I really don't feel well in my body. Even if they're a person who has great language skills, they still may not have the self-help skills to know to communicate that. So just for your information, something to be aware of. All right, so we've talked about ABCs of behavior, and we've talked about what are our functions of behavior, because if we're trying to take that ABC information, our goal is to figure out what is that behavior communicating, which would be the function of the behavior. So here is, and this sheet is in your resource folder. It's free. I like it because it's a checkbox, and goodness knows I'm really busy and you all are too. I don't have time to write out anecdotal notes for everything. I love a good checkbox. So the A, what happened before, I've got lots of options in there. Attention given to other. Maybe I told them no or don't. Telling people no sometimes can be really upsetting. It gives me a place at the bottom to say, is there something that's happening physically? Maybe they are sick today. Maybe they didn't sleep well. In the middle of that chart, I have a nice box that I can describe that behavior. And for some folks, if they have multiple challenging behaviors, I'm going to prioritize one or two that I am taking that data on at a time. I'm not going to try to fix everything at once. I always look for the ones that are going to give the most benefit to that student. That's where I want to start at, or behaviors that are dangerous, that could cause harm to them or others. My consequences, in that last checkbox, it has child did not have to do what was asked until later. Maybe we had planned ignoring. Maybe we gave them comfort. Maybe they needed help. Maybe someone had a conversation with the child. Maybe they were removed. There were lots of different options there. And then there's a back side of the sheet. And it gives me my C's. And all of these C's stands for different parts of the consequences. So we need to change the adult. So we're going to use positive language. Tell the child what to do. Tell them what they can do. Not maybe so much of we spend a lot of time telling our kids what not to do. We need to make sure that we tell them what they need to do. Other change you could be maybe they needed a less stimulating environment. Maybe we needed to make this activity more interesting for that child, and we'll talk about ways to do that in a bit. Under change the child, maybe we're teaching them skills like pause and think. So stopping what you're doing and thinking about the consequences of your actions before you do it. Maybe we're going to teach them a song or give them a scripted story. That change the child can be all sorts of things, and you can add in your own boxes. There's always blank space on all of these, and you can add in your own stuff. So change the consequence is adults whisper to get the child's attention. Maybe we're letting the child choose a positive consequence. Let the child sit in your lap after they did something positive as a reward. If they're a very young child, maybe we're giving them a movement break. Lots of things that you could do there. I like this sheet very much, and you don't have to use this particular one. Inside of that resource folder, you're going to find a couple of other options. of different types of ABC data sheets that you can start. So just know that. Sometimes taking data can be frightening. It can be a little bit overwhelming or a little bit scary to get started with that, especially if it's not something that you're familiar with doing. So I just wanted to make sure you have some things to get started with. So we're going to dive into what are these antecedent-based interventions and how to get started with them. First off, set clear, consistent behavioral expectations. We need to tell kids exactly what to do. Many years ago when I was in the classroom, I told my students to pick up the table. We'd been doing an art activity and I said, hey guys, let's pick up the table. I meant, let's put the markers away, let's put the papers into your cubbies. When I turned around, all of my little 4 or 5 kids that I had at that time lifted the table up off the ground because I literally said, let's pick up the table. And so making sure that I'm communicating my behavioral expectations. So it'd be much better to say, let's put the markers back into the box. Let's put your papers in the cubby. So give clear, consistent behavioral expectations and clear, consistent directions. And if you're giving behavioral expectations, so that's our rules, right? What are our rules here? Make sure that it's consistent across adults or across environments. You need to come to some sort of agreement on what are the rules and how can we carry those out. So manipulate the learning environment. So we're going to change the environment. Maybe we're going to pair that environment with reinforcement. Reinforcement is powerful, and reinforcement is actually its own evidence-based practice all unto itself. I need to know, what does my kid, what does my client, what does my student like? And then how can I use that to help them do the activities that I need them to do? It's our paycheck, right? We all hopefully are getting a paycheck and getting paid for what we do. Reinforcement is a planned payment system, essentially, right? Of how we're going to get the kids some sort of motivation and reward for what we need them to do. So also purposely setting a schedule structure. Have a plan and flow to your day. So if you're in a therapy session, start and stop your therapy session the same way every time. Maybe the middle part is different, but what is the flow of your therapy session? If you are in a classroom or at home, we started and ended our day the same way. At my house, our flow of Saturdays most of the time has a similar flow. Think about what is your set schedule structure. When my son was very young, we had a consistent set bedtime, and we had a bedtime routine that we did before he went to bed so his body could start winding down to sleep. Other things that you might think about, if you're delivering instruction, maybe you need to move that instruction. Maybe they will not or cannot sit at a table yet. Maybe you're going to sit in the floor with them. Maybe you're going to provide preferred activities in the area. So you find out that they really like Thomas the Train, and I'm going to talk about how old I am here, right? They really like Thomas the Train. So maybe you have some things that have Thomas the Train on them that you can have a conversation about before you are asking them to do things. Maybe you know that your client coming in likes to hike. So maybe you have a brief conversation about hiking, something along those lines. Maybe you need to decrease or alter the task demand. Maybe you need to change the level of the task. Maybe a lot of times I feel like we set our kids up to fail because we don't look at, is this an appropriate task for them? Maybe we're asking them to do something that they don't have the skills to do yet. So we've put them in an impossible situation. Let's be realistic here. It's great to push people. We want to always give clear, high expectations, but we also want to give realistic expectations. If you don't know how to do 3-digit times 3-digit math, then asking you to do 3-digit by 3-digit math on your own would be overwhelming. And it would cause me to be upset as well. Think about your own life. If you're put in a situation to where you don't know how to do what's being asked of you, it's really upsetting and it's really stressful. And if I'm going to have a breakdown in my day, that's going to be the point. So let's make sure that we're asking people to we're having realistic and fair expectations. Another thing to consider is priming. Priming is now its own evidence-based practice as well. It's a part of antecedent-based intervention, and priming is great. So some of the ways that priming is telling people what they need to know right before they need to know it, right? So I'm reminding you of the rules and the expectations right before you do this. So in my classroom, I used priming. One of the schools that I worked at, our playground bordered a bull field. So they had lots of cows and they kept the bulls. They kept their giant 4,000-pound bull in the field next to our playground. And it was not, the fencing was barbed wire fence that was electrified. And there was no fence, there was no kid-safe fence between the playground and the bull field. So, right, that makes zero sense at all, but that's where we were. So every school year, I would tell my kids, I would teach my students, because it was a serious safety issue. There's a 4,000-pound bull. There is a barbed wire fence that is electrified. And I do not want to be the teacher who needed to call anyone and say, I'm so sorry that Johnny touched the high voltage fence. So my students, the rule was that they could only play where the wood chips were. There was a grassy field area that would have been beautiful to kick a ball on next to the bull fence, but we did not do that in my classroom because it wasn't safe. And so I taught my students the rule, which was we only play where the wood chips are. So at the beginning of the school year, I would bring in wood chips so my kids could feel the wood chips and see the wood chips. We would go out to the playground and we walked the border of where the playground equipment was and where the wood chips were. And I said, guys, remember, we only play where the wood chips are. If you go in the grassy area, you will have to come and stand with me. So my priming came in. That's me teaching the rule, right? I've made it visual. I've showed them the wood chips. We've practiced it. We've walked around. And then every day before we go out to the playground, I would have my kids repeat after me. All right, guys, what's the rule on the playground? We only play where the wood chips are. So priming was me telling them what they needed to do right before they did it. So now I'll give you my kid example with my son. When my son was younger and he loved to play soccer, he was a very good soccer player. But once he started running, he had a very hard time keeping his hands to himself. He would forget that we don't use our hands to touch the ball. And we don't use our hands to shove other kids down as we happen to run by them. This is not a popular thing to do. It makes other parents upset and it's not very friendly. And even though you're really in the moment and enjoying that running, we still can't do it. We still cannot shove other friends down on the soccer field. So I primed him by reminding him right before he would run out. I know his coach for years probably thought I was a little bit off, but it worked. Right before my kid would run out onto the field, I would say, buddy, remember, we don't touch our friends. We don't use our hands to touch our friends or the ball on the field. And it worked. He just needed that reminder of we cannot touch our friends. We cannot touch the ball right before he ran out onto the field. So priming is telling people what they need to know right before they need to know it. Behavior momentum is another great strategy. Behavior momentum is many times for our students with any kind of disabilities, they have experienced frequent failure. And think about it in this context. If you came to work every day and you failed, and you came back tomorrow and you failed, and you tried something different and you still failed. Everything you tried, you failed, or fairly consistently you kept failing. What would happen? Well, eventually you would stop trying, right? I would give up. Personally, I would be like, I would stop trying. And that's the same thing that happens for all of us. So students with disabilities frequently experience failure at a much higher rate than their same age peers. So one of the things that we can do to combat that is by using behavior momentum. So we ask them to do something that we know they know how to do before we give them the challenging or new item. So here's an example. If I have a student that is learning how to add, um, they're learning how to add 2-digit numbers plus 2-digit numbers. But this is a new skill for them. So instead, I start out by giving them a problem of 1-digit plus 1-digit, or 2-digit, so 19 plus 2, instead of starting out with 19 plus 22. I know they know how to do the other first, right? So think about that in the terms of the folks you work with. What's something that you know they know how to do? For some of my students in the past, it has been something as simple as, hey, clap your hands, touch your nose, point to the red dot. It has been something, it could be something very simple, but it needs to be something that you know they're going to have success with before you ask them to do something really hard. I'll give you my Boy Scout example. Learning to tie knots. My son is in Boy Scouts, and it's been very good experience for him, and it's been really great to our family. But learning to tie knots has been a huge challenge. Fine motor skills are a struggle for us, and especially in the past when he was much younger. And so when on nights that they would have knot tying practice, I convinced the adult leader to start out with a knot, the square knot. The square knot is very basic, and my kid could do that. And it gave him a chance to be successful before we asked him to try the knots that were much harder for him. So you can use that for all kinds of things beyond academic instruction. Behavioral momentum can work for a lot of different areas. And that's what antecedent-based interventions are, right? It's all of these different options that you can decide which ones that you need to use for the people that you're working with. You might use a few of them, you might use all of them. It just depends on your situation and your person. All right, other antecedent-based interventions, place-specific demands. So I worked with a student, I worked with a lot of students over the years, but I had a student once say to me, Miss Kim, you've said so many things to me. You've said so many things to me. I don't know which things do you want me to do. Sometimes I'm a very verbal person, and I tend to talk people to death. So I apologize. Hopefully I won't do that to us today. But he needed less words from me. So saying sit versus sit down in your chair and show me you're ready to work. Especially when a person is upset, they need less words because the brain is shutting down, right? We're jumping into fight, flight, or freeze mode if I am already upset. Place specific demands. This is a great place to put in a visual support, and we'll talk about visuals in a bit. Offering choice. Choice is powerful. Hopefully you had a choice today of whether or not you got to be here. I hope you had a good choice about your lunch and what you ate for lunch today, or I hope you got to eat lunch today. Kids and even adults with disabilities frequently have their choices taken away from them. And that is just sad, right? It's sad, and it's disempowering. And so we can give back power to other people by offering them choice. And it can be lots of things. It could be a choice of what reinforcer they want to work for today. So maybe they love to go. So I'm going to tell you my own personal thing. So today, my reinforcer is an orange aid. I've had a very sore throat, and so today when I'm done with this, I'm totally giving myself a reinforcer, and it's motivating me to come today and to make sure that I got to do this training with you all. I am buying myself an orange aid, a nice frozen slushie, and I'm totally looking forward to that. Maybe it's a choice of materials. We're going to do a writing activity. Do you want to use markers, pencils, colored pens? What would you like to use today? Maybe you're going to do 2 or 3 tasks, and it doesn't matter the order of the task. So maybe you say, hey, we need to do these 2 things or these 3 things. Which one do you want to do first? It gives them control, which is important. All of us need to feel like we have power and control in our life. Maybe it's a choice of location. Hey, do you want to meet in my office? Do you want to meet outside today? Where would you like to meet at? Lots of things to think about with choice. So another great antecedent-based intervention is establishing routine. Routine is powerful. many students and many people in general struggle to follow verbal instructions because words disappear, right? uh, so creating a routine can help make sure that they know what's going to happen at any given time. And think about your life. You probably have routines that you do that you have created within your life. So I have a routine for when I get home. I have to hang my wallet and my keys in the same place or I could never find them again. So that's a part of my routine. I take my shoes off. And at my house, as soon as I get home, even if it's 2 o'clock or 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I put on my PJs, right? I don't care what's going on, but as soon as I come home, I need to put on my PJs. That's a part of my routine, no matter what time of day it is. I'll confess that today. So what are routines in your life? So think about that for a few seconds. If you are school-based, I always tell people, or if you are home-based, spend time teaching these routines. And we're going to talk about what might be common routines. So for school, common routines are arrival, going home, lunch might be a routine. Maybe if I'm home based, how do we get ready for bed at night? At my house, my personal child had massive issues with sleep. So falling asleep, staying asleep, his sleep schedule was a train wreck. And so we developed a really strong bedtime routine of the same pattern every night, the same bedtime every night. Routines are comforting, and we'll develop muscle memory essentially as we do the same things over and over. And on one hand, I've had people say to me, but that sounds boring. And it might be boring, but it's comforting. And you can decide what are appropriate routines to develop in your setting. Maybe it's the start of a therapy session. You do the same one or two things every time. Maybe it's the way you end your therapy session. My personal church has a routine for how they end our service. They do the same thing every Sunday, the way that it ends. And they do the same thing for the arrival. And the middle part of it may be different every time, but having that same beginning and that same ending, it's comforting. And you will develop that muscle memory that will help it be more likely that you will be successful in engaging in that routine. All right, self-monitoring, and I'm watching the time and I'm pretty close. I think I'm going to talk for about 6 more minutes, and I should be at that point of taking questions at about 10 till. So you can put those in the chat if you have them. Self-monitoring is helping the child or adult, right? It doesn't matter the age in the context of antecedent-based interventions, become more aware of their behavior. So you're handing over responsibility for monitoring and taking care of their own behavior. Now you're going to need visual supports, and they're going to have to practice. In the beginning, they may need a lot of support. And hopefully they will be able to increase desired behavior or decrease undesirable behavior. So self-monitoring, the way that you would get started is pick a specific behavior. Maybe the behavior is managing emotions. Our example on here is they're going to listen to the teacher and follow along. Maybe they're going to stay on task. I've seen a lot of staying on task. An adult needs to take a bit of baseline data, and then you have to teach that monitoring system to the student, and you're going to practice with the child. And I'm going to show you some examples of self-monitoring behavior supports. So this is when I'm upset. This is to help, I've used this many times to help support different age students with a variety of disabilities on what can we do when we're mad? Because guess what? We all get mad. Getting mad or upset is perfectly human behavior. It's having a coping skill and appropriate responses to being upset. So this visual support is inside of that resource folder. And here's the great thing. Maybe the person that you're working with or the person that you're supporting, maybe they don't care or would not enjoy doing any of those options. So reading, listening to music, rest on a pillow, maybe those things would not interest them or be calming for them or supportive. I tell people, cut those off and add your own, right? Modify that to fit your needs. The way that we teach this is we just start practicing. What can I do when I'm upset? Well, I could read, I could listen to music. This is a great tool that you need to work with that individual person to figure out what helps them calm down, because this is going to vary from person to person. I know for me personally, when I get upset, I love to read, and that would be enjoyable, and a nice calm spot to where I could just read for a few minutes would help me calm down. But that might not work well for other people. So just know you can modify. And I'm going to show you a 5-point scale. And the incredible 5-point scale breaks down behaviors and social skills. So if you Google the incredible 5-point scale, you're going to have a ton of different things come up. And the 5-point scale, basically, you pair it with a number. The one at the bottom, you can see on that, it's my right side of the screen. You can see the one, the green, everything is going great, all the way up to a 5. They are feeling out of control. And one of the goals of this is you want the child to help create it. And I'm going to show you some examples and some options of what this might look like. And there are some options inside of that resource folder. You have to teach the student how to use it, and you have to reinforce them using it. And if you're working with a person that doesn't understand numbers, maybe they're very young, or maybe they have a cognitive disability, you can replace that with colors or shapes. There's a few options around this. And there are a couple of books. The Incredible 5-Point Scale, and you see their website on the screen. They have free printable visual supports that you can print out to get started with this. I have used this with many, many different students, from everything from sexualized behavior all the way down to support for aggressive behavior, or just students that had a lot of emotional upset. There is an older version called A 5 is Against the Law, and it is geared for high school and adulthood, and it works with social boundaries, and it's set up on the same thing. And I will confess, A 5 is Against the Law, I didn't really like the title of it, but it does have some great information, and I don't make any money. I'm not selling those books, but they're just great resources out there that you should know about. And the 5-point scale has free visuals to help you get started, and you can Google. Now, this is why I like it, and this is how I use the 5-point scale. So it has 3 columns. The first column is your rating. So how am I feeling? Am I happy? Am I upset? The middle column has what does it look like, sound like, feel like. So a 1 is everything's okay. I'm smiling, I'm giving people hugs if that's appropriate. All the way up to a 5 is I can't handle it. I'm hitting, I'm kicking, I'm screaming, I'm crying. The third column is where it's at, right? And you don't, this particular version is connected to earning points, and you don't have to do that necessarily. But on a 1, the what can I do is, or I can try, an adult can help me, I can keep being a good friend, I can use my nice words, I can share with friends. All the way up to a 4 is I can use my words, I could take a break, I could lay in a blanket, I could listen to music, I could ask for something else, I could make a different choice. It gives you strategies of what can you do. And I want to say that no one should ever be punished for reaching a 5, right? We all get mad. I personally have been very mad in moments. I will confess, I am a human, and I have lost my temper. And it's just about learning coping skills. And so this is a great visual strategy to help teach those coping skills. And this is a freebie one. You can find that at that website you see on the page as well. So the Incredible 5-Point Scale is a very useful tool. And this is my last official slide, and then I'll show you, I'll pull up my resource folder. So if you have a phone, I have a QR code for that resource folder. So visual supports are, I can't say enough good things about using visual supports. Visual supports, students and learners with autism have a tendency to be visual. Visual supports are so effective because words disappear. We made sure that you all had the PowerPoint today because words disappear. when you leave here today, you're going to remember, if I'm lucky, you're going to remember maybe 80% of what I said for the next couple of hours. But 3 days from now, you might only remember 50% of it, right? And I'm going to claim we are all fully functional adults, and everything is going well. We all got our 8 hours of sleep last night, and everything is going good in our life. So we're not totally stressed out. Um, the same thing happens for our kids, right? They have a bad day, they have a bad night, they're really stressed, they have a lot of things going on in their family. Then visual supports, because they don't disappear, hopefully. Print extras. They're inside of that resource folder. You're going to find some book ring cards, which are they're kind of that upper right side direction. It says picture cards. So it has things like stop, go, hands down. You see an example on the screen of a schedule. We all have a schedule. A visual support could be something as simple as a post-it note. I use post-it notes like crazy. I have reached the age that I have a hard time remembering things. I had COVID last year, and it has seriously affected my short-term memory sometimes. I need a good post-it note to remind me what I'm supposed to do. And I get extreme satisfaction out of, marking things out as I did them. We are all using visual supports in our day, right? Stop signs, red lights. If you're driving to someone's house, the address on the house is essentially a visual support. So using them for our students and our folks that have disabilities and lots of abilities is a great way to go. I tell people that anything that I'm having to say over and over, anything that I'm having to repeat frequently, and especially if I'm working with someone that has a lot of anxiety, a visual schedule will help them to know what's coming in their day. So they don't have to guess, because I don't want them to guess what's going to happen today. They need to know so they're not worried about it. And I'll flip to the last slide, I'll flip to my next to last slide, which is a resource folder. That was sent out as well, but you can shine your phone or computer camera at this. And I will stop talking, and then I will flip to the link for the evaluation in just a minute. And I didn't know if we had any questions.
Kim, there are none.
Thank you for watching this video. Please take a moment to complete this short feedback form by scanning the QR code or typing the URL into your web browser. Thank you.